much. And this is an amazing panel to have. And I do want to make sure that we're able to hear everyone's story and everyone's points of view in this. I thought that we would keep this pretty simple. What I would like to do is kind of 3 round robin kind of sessions. One where we hear from each of you kind of some of your experiences and your organizations and initiatives in the blockchain space, kind of in a very brief moment. And then I've got 2 questions. I'll do a round robin, and then we'll end by taking questions from the audience. So we'll want to keep this tight. We'll want to keep it focused, but I'm really excited to really hear and help people understand the diversity of what's going on in the Hyperledger community. So why don't I start with Joseph from Chainyard. Can you tell us more about what you've been doing in this space? I hinted at it a little bit in the presentation deck, in the opening keynote, but you guys have built something just really amazing, and I want us to hear more about it.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for the nice introduction and giving an upfront idea about trust your supplier. So there was an introduction about me, Jijo Joseph, Vice President of Chainyard. Chainyard is a company. It's primarily started as a services company based out of North Carolina in US. So in the early days of blockchain, we developed more than like 2-3 dozens of solutions for other clients, primarily on Hyperledger and a few of them on Ethereum. Then at some point we thought about why don't we do one product by ourselves, right? It's a simple technology idea. And what happened is we realized, we don't have the domain expertise or muscle power to, go alone in the market, being a technology company. I mean, that is a very critical information for everybody who's listening here. So this product is on the supply chain procurement area. So we directly went to IBM CPO, Chief Procurement Officer Bob Murphy, and briefed him about this product. And Bob had around like 18,000 plus suppliers for him. I mean, he's having challenges of managing them. So he found a wonderful idea. So IBM and Chainyard joined together, and we took this supplier's digital identity into market. So that digital identity supplier could be cross-utilized across multiple players. Today we have suppliers from more than 57 countries. More than 30 major Fortune 200 suppliers joined the network. So it's a very satisfying world for Chainyard.
That's great. Thank you, Jigo. I want to turn next to Dharman from Tech Mahindra. Dharman, I remember hearing about this anti-spam system that was built in collaboration with you and with the telecom companies there in India, and just being amazed at the volume that's there. Can you tell us a little bit more about Tech Mahindra's work, generally speaking, in the blockchain space, but give us a hint at least on a little bit of the work on this project?
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and really glad to be here, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. So speaking about what we do at Tech Mahindra, basically we started small as everyone, and we have grown very fast. That's been really fascinating. And good thing about blockchain, when we talk about blockchain, it's not just about solving some corporate problems. It's about, we have everybody on the table, be it academia, be it government functions, be it so that's been something very exciting, and especially the work that we have done in terms of bringing the anti-spam solution together on blockchain. That's been remarkable. I mean, imagine a blockchain network which is going to probably solve the spam text messages and calls, which we all are. I mean, it's not just limited to India. I'm sure. The spam is throughout. I mean, everywhere in the world. First, we thought it was probably a more problem in India, but then we realized basically it's a global problem. The matter of fact, just to give a quick background, basically when this problem was so big, the authorities really wanted to do something for it. It was not just about bringing in a compliance, but it was more about the customer satisfaction. End of the day, customers are not satisfied. They are not able to regulate the telemarketers, and telecom operators are not able to monetize it well. So end of the day, it's not too much of chaos at such a large scale. And eventually, the authorities we were able to convince them. So we kind of partnered with them even before this regulation kind of came out. So because they wanted to make sure that such a huge problem of such magnitude can be solved with some technology. And after vetting all the other technologies, basically the technology that they were convinced was something blockchain, because they wanted to have somebody a framework which can help all the telecom operators come together and cooperate and probably share data without having to worry about what's happening with their data. Because already if we see that telecom operators are already under so much of pressure, and nobody is willing to kind of share their information, because they always have a threat what's going to happen with my information. So blockchain is the technology which gives them that that peace of mind, being able to share information at the same time, get the information that they require from others. So that's really fascinating, and the numbers are really fascinating that we have over there. The transactions are in millions that we have, and yeah, I mean, it's the blockchain side of the network is already live. So yeah, so that's something really interesting.
Millions of Indian citizens using it to track their anti-spam preferences and share those as they move from one network to another, right?
That is right. Yeah. So now that network is there, basically where the preference and a consent of every individual, whoever wants to put their consent as a do not disturb, gets available to every telecom operator almost real time. So nobody can deny saying, okay, nobody can actually try to make a spam without having a consent from a customer. At the same time, now there are other things that open up. There can be a fast forward mobile number portability. There can be immediate. There could be so many other solutions that can come across. And now that data is getting shared across the telecom network, not specific just to a specific telecom network. So basically now bringing in a compliance, finding out some probably something unethical happening on somebody's network can now be easily found, because now the activity of anybody can be found out across the network, and there is better analytics to find out or predict if there are any unethical activities that are going out, or if somebody has blacklisted some of the telemarketer, everybody gets to know. So it's basically earlier it used to happen that somebody tries to make some telemarketer gets blacklisted by some operator. They kind of drop that SIM and go to the next operator next day and start doing the same activity without getting traced. So all this is the side effects of bringing in all together on the blockchain.
So we have know your supplier. Yeah. We have know your supplier, know your spammer. Alex, why don't I'd like to call on you next. Chainstack is a really interesting company, and I believe you all were the first to actually roll out support for Fabric 2.0 on your infrastructure, if I recall. So can you tell us a bit more about the company and some of the projects that you might be working on now?
Sure, very proudly so. We were indeed the first to support 2.0. We tried to be the first in many ways, and we tried to be always at the edge of the engineering process, especially for blockchain. So just in a nutshell, what we do is to provide a complete suite of blockchain managed services for enterprises and also for innovators. And that's for all stages of the projects. That goes from ideation to MVP to full production. And we work closely with innovators of any size. So we already have 800 builders that are currently using our platforms, and our community is 9,000 strong. So we are growing, even though we are a startup. It's just 2 years under the belt, but we try to push the boundaries at all times to get as many people involved and as many people as knowledgeable as possible, and to get a platform that is as accessible as possible for everyone. Our customers range from the individual developer who is running their own individual node, and maybe on Ethereum, all the way to multinational corporations that are trusting us with their blockchain infrastructure. And we support multi-cloud deployments on-prem and also hybrid. In addition to Hyperledger Fabric, which is really at the core of what we do, we have a range of other protocols, but that's something that we always keeps evolving over time. We officially joined the Linux Foundation in September. We are relatively new official members. However, we have been part of the community since the beginning, and we've been actively engaging with the community with in different ways. I know Dalman has been part of one of our events. We try to do educational events, mentoring and advising also, for those who are just new to the Hyperledger community, but they need a bit of a leg up on trying to get the infrastructure. So when it comes to running the nodes, that could be also a costly or very taxing last mile for innovators, and that's where we're coming and helping. We pride ourselves with excellent customer service. It's very personal. We have the privilege of being such a small companies that we can give that one-on-one attention still, and we want to keep it that way and scaling the team in that way. So, and just to give an example of how people can also get engaged with Hyperledger and with us as well, we have a number of educational events. The last ones were 2 Fabric bootcamps. Probably you have seen, Darman was part of one. We deployed 30 nodes all at the same time. It was super experimental. Many things went right, some things went wrong, but that's the beauty of engineering. You can never control, fully what, especially if it's live. And we have 50 developers who received a certificate at the end of the event, and we had around 400 people who signed up overall. So we hope to keep being engaged and involved that way with the community. Thank you, Brian.
That's great. And I also did like the mention of multi-cloud. We all have to remember, like, we build these blockchain networks for the resiliency that comes from being able to have nodes running in lots of different places, right? So to have vendors who support that, as you're building out these networks, to have nodes at AWS and Azure and IBM and also on your own hardware, your own bare metal, and have those be assigned to different people and all that. That's really manifesting what this is about. So thank you for dedicating, what I'm sure is a lot of work to making something like that work.
Sure.
Speaking about bringing in new developers, new energy, new participation, I really want to turn the floor next to Arun. Arun, you're one of the co-leads of the India chapter, which is great. You're on the technical steering committee, which is also really awesome. What don't you do? I mean, you feel like you're really so active in so many different places. Can you tell us a bit about what and I know you can't really talk much about Walmart. They kind of keep you on a short leash on that front. But can you tell us a little bit about maybe what you do at Walmart in terms of helping them use Hyperledger and being that bridge, or other things that you think are interesting about the work that you do in the Hyperledger community?
Sure. So, as you know, Walmart is one of the largest organizations in the world who not only have employed a large amount of people, but also we deal with the scale at which Walmart operates. It's very large, right? And also when we talk about scale, we also talk about multiple organizations doing it. It could be partnering with Walmart or doing business with Walmart, and then the end customers visibility which we have is very large. And when it comes to that, one of the key thing which Walmart found blockchain to be a very potential solution is on the food business, on food safety. And you might have already read on multiple blog posts about Walmart's food traceability and how Walmart helped within seconds, we were able to track mango being traced from like a source farm to the end customers. So that's what attracted Walmart to this initiative, to this niche technology. And Walmart was very quick enough early on in the stage, one of the early adopters of, in fact, blockchain technology within Hyperledger framework, that to Hyperledger Fabric. So so that's how Walmart's journey started. And I'm excited to know what comes in future for us.
Great. Well, we're really excited to build the India developer community with you as well. I want to turn now to Suji. Suji, you're calling in from Singapore, right? But you're originally from Kerala, if I have that right?
That is right. Good. Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning and good evening. Yes, Brian, I'm originally from Kerala. I'm born and brought up. I did my graduation from one of the institutions in Kerala. So Kerala is very close to my heart. My folks still live there. But unfortunately, I'm unable to go there to meet my folks. So as an introduction, Brian, you did mention about my previous engagement with DLT Ledgers, another company that I was engaged with, and I was a part of the initial founding group. We worked on Hyperledger for various use cases. I mean, I had a very good chance to meet with others, Jijo and Brian, of course, you in Singapore during the Singapore FinTech as well. So it's been, the journey has been more over 2 years, since 2018. I guess that was the first time we could catch up. And currently I'm involved in quite a few things, mainly on the community development and democratizing the blockchain. So I'm currently running the Singapore Computer Society's blockchain special interest group. So the entire group is dedicated to bring the awareness of the blockchain into the related communities. Say, for example, we are working with the banking community to see, I mean, most of these knowledge are related or available only to a very few people, technologies, but it is not, the blockchain is not required from just from a technologist, and everybody need to understand the blockchain. And as you know, today morning, it's one of the premier banks in Singapore, DBS Bank, Development Bank of Singapore, which incidentally was also acquired a bank in India recently, a couple of months back, called Lakshmi Vilas Bank in India, started trading in the crypto. So the cryptos, the blockchains are going to be the mainstream. The hype cycle has been gone. So currently I'm involved in working with the community, the banking community, the supply chain community, as a part of coming from a technologist, how we democratize it, how we can bring people to disperse the various myths and around blockchain and making into the mainstream. So I was involved with Hyperledger since 2018, developing one of the trade platforms, and also including the document validation for trade finances as well. So I've been involved in very detailed as a technical person. So I'm a nerd by myself. So I've been involved in that. And currently I've been involved in bringing how we can manage the travel bubble or the travel green channels between the various countries, how blockchain can be coming together. I'm involved with the WHO, World Health Organization, in defining the standards and how it should be. So there are a couple of countries involved, Estonia, Israel, Singapore, to bring the entire travel bubble, how we can manage the data within a consortium of various countries. Every country is having different standards on how they want to do the testing and all, how we can bring it all together into a transparent manner that it will not affect the privacy laws, as well as it can give out the data in a very immutable manner so that people can travel. So there are some initiatives coming with the WHO, IATA, and other people were defining the various standards on the blockchain, how we want to set it up between the countries. So that's what I'm involved in. And in Singapore, we are also, now the testing is gone, vaccine has come in, how we can make these data available in a democratization way. That's what I'm currently involved in to help the community.
Definitely want to follow up on that we see a lot of movement in the
Brian, I think you're on mute if you're speaking.
Sorry, rookie mistake, as they say. Definitely want to connect with you on that, Suji, because there's a lot of interest we're seeing out there in digital identity and vaccination credentials and a way of being privacy preserving and all that kind of stuff. So really cool to hear that you're working on that. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to pass the mic over to Adarsh. Adarsh, you've been a tremendous supporter for us there at the Kerala Blockchain Academy. Can you tell us and tell the listeners though a little bit more about the work that you've done and kind of how we've worked together in the Hyperledger ecosystem?
Thanks, Brian. So we started our journey way back in 2016 as a small 3-member team in a lab exploring blockchain, like from the very beginning. And in 2017, I think we contacted Hyperledger. We started connecting with Julian, Martha, and of course you also. We started visiting Intel. I think Arun was there. Then we have Suji, Jiju, and all. And I think in 2018, we became the Hyperledger associate member. So our primary focus was on education. So like Government of Kerala was very keen on making more blockchain developers or the education part. So that's how we started collaborating with Intel on Hyperledger Sawtooth. We started designing a course on Hyperledger Sawtooth. And then we now also have a course on Hyperledger Fabric and all. So the primary agenda was started from education, like how we can nurture more people on blockchain. As you all know, like Kerala is more famous for education, in fact having the highest literacy rate. And of late we started working on projects also. Say like we are now a 25-member team, so we started exploring on projects also, and that's where we were awarded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on a vaccine supply chain traceability solution called ImmunoChain, as rightly pointed by Suji. Like that is the next thing which we have to focus. So this happened in 2019 where we were awarded for this. So I think India have one of the world's largest vaccine supply chain. I think it's called Mission Indradhanush. It's the universal vaccination immunization program of India. And with regard to the population of India, I think you know the scale of thing. And what we have seen is like there are around 70 to 20 different physical ledgers, starting from the public health centers till the district level, state level, and all. And we thought like, say, the distributed ledgers or the thing like Hyperledger is the best suited thing, so that you can easily trace out the things, as Arun was rightly pointing out, say the famous supply chain thing by Walmart. So that's a classical example of that. So that's where we started working on it. We started as a very small POC. Now we have piloted in more than 30 PHCs in Kerala, and we have submitted to Government of India also. So I think that that brings a way, say like more companies can collaborate, or it's like an open framework where more and more people can come and collaborate. And similarly, we also work on Hyperledger India also, like a identity framework thing, like the Orgbook initiative. So we have a very small team working on that, along with collaboration from Wipro and all. So that's another area which we are working. And similarly, we work with Hyperledger Besu India. So primarily on education part, like building the community, as Dr. Ashraf was pointing out, we have around 50 member colleges who are a part of the KBA Innovation Club, offering programs and free trainings and all. And I think Suji and Jijo have already recruited some of our alumni from KBA. So I think we can provide much more better alumni in future, say like building the ecosystem and training people on real ecosystems or real projects and all. So that's why we focus on both, like education plus the projects, so that education means like you have to work in the real life scenario and you have to familiarize with the real projects. So that's the agenda of KBA right now.
That's terrific. Now I want to kind of ask the room a question, the panel a question, and kind of get different perspectives from hopefully from all of you. How do you measure impact in these projects, right? It's so often as a nerd, you're in there, you're like standing these servers up and excited when a transaction gets hit, or something, you know, appears, the hello world kind of thing pops up, right? But for so many of these projects, you know, it's hard for us to kind of explain why we do this unless we can point to some outcome of some sort. And so I'm wondering if I could start with Arun to kind of just tell us kind of what's your sense of impact, whether it's of these technology initiative projects you've been a part of, or even the impact from involvement in the Hyperledger community.
Sure. So one of the key success factor for having a successful blockchain project is the collaboration. And when we think about blockchain, we don't only think about the organization from its sole purpose. We bring in partners, we also bring in competitors. So that's what makes it more challenging. And how do we get a successful project when we have so much of competitive space where nobody wants to share their critical business information, but still get the task done, right? So that's what is challenging over there. And so when it comes to those kind of challenges, I guess Hyperledger has been a leader in defining some of those standards, like for example, providing a framework which suits for those kind of use cases, and also coming up with a solution so quickly in collaboration, in partnership with those organizations themselves. So as you rightly point out in many of the forums, that Hyperledger follows duocracy kind of policy, where hey, you come in and then you join the development efforts and you define the policies, how you want to see and what you want to see in your solutions. So that's what makes it a right forum for us to be in.
Yeah, Arun mentioned the word duocracy. That's something that's really core to every open source community. You know, the premise is, you know, it's not enough for any of us to sit there and say, you know, Hyperledger Fabric has to do X, Y, or Z. If we're able to put an engineer on it, or two or three, or ask others, you know, hey, are you also interested in solving this problem? Let's work together on it. Let's each put a half FTE on it, and maybe we can make progress together. That those who do that work should be able to carry the day in terms of deciding what gets done, what gets built. It's something that might sound rather dismaying to people who are used to very formal processes around software development, but it tends to work, whether it's the law of large numbers or something like that. But it's key to open source, and we've always tried to build the Hyperledger community to really represent the best practices from the open source community. So one measure of that impact is certainly how much diversity do you have on that project, how many different types of contributors do you have, and that sort of thing. So that's a valuable perspective. Who else wants to touch on this topic of impact?
Let me go next and
Please.
touch on the open source, because to me the beauty of open source is actually going towards a model that increases flexibility and customizations, right? So you have a naturally occurring customization that happens and evolves with the community, because the community will evolve together with the open source according to their needs. And that brings also, from in terms of the impact that we see, we have eyes on the ground. We are essentially the last mile on the decentralized journey, because eventually when we're looking at North Star metrics to measure, for us is actually usage of nodes. So all the way, like all the work that becomes, that comes first on the preparation architecture, all comes and eventually needs to go to having nodes deployed that are actually running and performing transactions. So to me, it's about giving and providing the entire community a high degree of flexibility. You had mentioned earlier, Brian, about the different models, and we have seen over the years how that's actually been a key component for successful deployment of projects. So how can an enterprise building, whatever it's the entire existing infrastructure, blockchain is this like an unknown entity, as already in a very complex environment, how can you make it build and match with the legacy system that's already there? So how can the blockchain be mature enough to talk to enterprise level, enterprise grade infrastructure without jeopardizing the security or even the existing management of such infrastructure? So that's when a solution like ChainStack comes into play and say, would you like to have us to build the cloud infrastructure for you and manage it on your behalf? That can be a very flexible, very light touch, very very good for an initial stage of the project. But then it can be that someone needs to have a very specific, very secure, on-prem, highly customized solution. And that's when having that flexibility makes a difference between having a hurdle or progressing and keeping innovation going. So that's when I think, open source, flexibility of deployment, coming together, we can help out with that and contribute to the community with this.
Yeah, I want to plan this a bit. Oh, it looks like, is Gijo still there? I don't see his video. I wonder, oh, there you are. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm here, right.
Great. Actually, that's a nice pivot point to you, and I want to actually incorporate an open question then from the Q&A and asking that. So Alex tells us, the flexibility of open source software, the ability to be kind of a front end for your customers who don't want to have to deal with that complexity, but being able to be a service provider and a technology provider to kind of make sense of that. Has that flexibility worked out for Chainyard as well, and engagement with the open source community, or has it been a challenge? Admittedly, dealing with open source software can be a challenge for entrepreneurs and startups in this space. And so how do you ride that balance? How do you make sure you get the benefits of that flexibility from open source without it becoming a drag on being a startup?
Sure, Brian, more importantly, more than the flexibility from the open source, we found that the flexibility of a blockchain, right? Flexibility of blockchain give more innovative solutions on the top. So we see blockchain gives you, the value pillar is like at the foundation, you have a foundation of data sharing across net of people. And second is like a transformation layer of where you have a smart contracts are being used for bringing in efficiency. And third layer is where you get new business models created on top of that. That business model creation opportunities where we see as the greatest flexibility. I'll tell you an example. When this example I mentioned the panel discussion as well about Rapid Supply Connect program we launched. So when this PP hit, when the COVID hit US in last March, right? There was a shortage of PP all over, right? Hospitals and everybody is finding it very difficult to procure those. So the three things, right? Quality of the supplier was an issue, quality of the product was an issue, and the lead time and lag, like lead time and availability was an issue. People were not knowing that. So we use that flexibility. We had this trust your supplier with a quality suppliers database. They are verified, trusted suppliers. And we joined with IBM immediately. IBM Sterling had the lead time and availability on their database. So we put them together and created a Rapid Supplier Connect program for US federal government, the healthcare organization to procure PPE kit. They know who they are talking to. They have the trust on the system, right? So that's a new business model we immediately created, and it was free. We launched for free because of the COVID, and within like 6 weeks, more than 500 suppliers and buyers started trading on it. So I see a large opportunity of flexibility of creating new business models on top of it. Is one of the key impact factors I found using blockchain, especially with the Hyperledger Fabric.
What was the biggest challenge as an entrepreneur in working with blockchain as a sector, or specifically with open source software with Hyperledger? You can be honest. It's okay. We're not about advertising here. Our honest conversation is always the best.
I mean, the earlier days, the conversion was taking so much time as a service provider, right? I mean, we had to go there and educate people. People do come to us and say that, I want a blockchain, right? They didn't even realize it those days. So now those days are past. People can recognize between what is the difference between blockchain and Bitcoin. So things are much easier. But we didn't have much challenge with Hyperledger. But the initial versions, we had a lot of challenges. But the newer versions, we don't have much challenges, especially backed by the many big companies, including Linux Foundation, and compared to other platforms, the great advantage we had is developer availability is there. I mean, it is not there the way we would like to be. Still, if there are students there in this group, in the US, still there is one blockchain person has around 5 jobs still available, right? That is the demand still you have. But so those are some of the advantages compared to other platforms. We look that there are more people available.
Adarsh, I wonder if I can then use this as a pivot to you. I mean, no doubt you all are jumping into this space and building out the 20,000 developers because of a passion and a belief in this. Do you think the impact will be there? I mean, how would you measure the impact of training all these individuals up, and where do you think that impact is most likely to land for the broader Indian continent? Really, is it in public sector applications and commercial applications? And what?
Yeah, exactly. So as mentioned, whenever we start with blockchain, as Jijo was mentioning, in the early days, people always have a confusion whether it is Bitcoin or they will always consider this. They can't differentiate between blockchain. And when we started designing the course and all, what we found is Hyperledger was one of the best things, because in most of the public blockchains, we still had issues with the tokens and all. So we can't directly deploy a live project and make them feel what is exactly happening due to the crypto regulations and all. So there, what we've seen is Hyperledger was one of the best solutions for it. We can really show the students or show the developers what exactly is happening in the distributed ledger. We can deploy it, we can test it, and even write to an enterprise level kind of things. So that was an ideal thing for promoting the blockchain education, and also, as you mentioned, the last volume of 20,000 professionals. So there we found the distributed ledgers are much more ideal for it, and they can also correlate the things, how things are happening, keeping aside the token part or keeping aside the crypto part, so that they don't get too much confused. So that was my initial thought. And as Alex was mentioning, with the upcoming things like the 2.0 and all, so there's a huge enthusiasm from the developers, and also okay, the newer versions are coming up, and we can have more flexibility in developing the things, and more interoperability things are also coming up. For the identity, we have the Indy and many other kind of things. So the specialization as well as the research activities primarily focus too much, because I was awarded with the IBM OSAP in 2017. So at that time, even we are just shifting from the PBFT kind of thing. So now we have much more developed consensus approaches and all, and we even have the pluggable consensus kind of things. So that's much more comfortable from the education point of view. If more and more researchers comes, or if that beyond developers, if someone have to explore the DLT technologies and all, now we have a lot of provisions on it. So that's my point in that. I think in the coming years we will have a huge crowd also in the Indian context who are really fascinating regarding this DLT technology.
That's great. And if we training this next wave of developers, not just on how blockchain technology works, and I mean, how Hyperledger works and others, right? But also on how to engage in open source communities, that is a real skill, because being able to be self-sufficient to answer your own questions, but then also realize, oh, here is a real question it's worth asking one of the core developers about, or hey, I found a bug, how do I report that, right? Those are skills that should be taught early. And when I was an undergraduate in computer science at Berkeley, it was textbooks literally that we're still learning programming from, that it was just so foreign to me. I wanted to make it a social thing and engage and learn and understand. So kudos for figuring that out, and I think that'll have a tremendous impact.
Sure.
Dharman, if I can turn it to you, I think Tech Mahindra is in a position of having to kind of sell to some degree to customers kind of the value of a blockchain approach to solving a particular problem. And let me guess, maybe is it that, or are people coming to you going, we know we want to use a blockchain to solve this, or we're pretty sure we do, we just want to figure out the right way and how to have the right impact? How much do you have to sell it and be a kind of a big vision person, or and has that changed in the last year perhaps?
Oh, absolutely. It has changed a lot. I mean, the 2018, 2019 was primarily we had to kind of go and convince, everybody wanted to do something in blockchain, but we're still not convinced. So, so that we have come far ahead. I mean, we do not have to convince blockchain anybody today. And everybody now is talking about how do I do it? Probably some of them really come with a very specific idea, and everybody's been trying something. And especially with the platforms like the Chain Stack and the other platforms, they have those tools required for them to kind of start playing with. And now when they come in, basically they already have a clear, use case in mind. Okay, this is what I want to. But at the same time, as to your previous question as well, how do you quantify? What is the impact that we are going to get out of the particular blockchain project? And to the point what Jijo also mentioned, basically it opens up so many various models or so many different avenues that you can bring in with blockchain, which can be tangible and intangible. So, but we still try to bring in a KPIs which makes it a little more tangible. So, because there are technologies today that help you collaborate, but end of the day, even the large organizations, they still have problems, right? I mean, so we go down to that. Basically, what is your exact problem that you're trying to solve, which we think blockchain can serve a purpose. So there could be two ways to convince, basically. One is basically, is this a problem that can be done with some other solution, some other technology? Probably most of the times which require a collaboration, which there is a conflict of interest and there is a multi-party transaction that's happening. Blockchain automatically makes a lot of value because now it's making it possible. And how to make a tangible outcome or a benefit out of it is basically, we have to kind of drill down to every process and how much of manual effort of reconciliation that they have, how much of an effort that they have to do a manual check on both sides, or how much of a effort they have to put in to figure out the right documentation that they probably have. And so yeah, I mean, but it has opened up so many different avenues, to be frank. I mean, one of the key evangelizer of this blockchain has been the government, to be frank. And specifically in India, we have been helping so many different government functions, be it vehicle life cycle, be it education, so many different functions. Of course, the land registry and all has been happening since so long. So there are a lot of intangible benefits that this technology can bring in, because it's actually makes it possible to do it, which otherwise was not possible. But of course, I mean, in the corporate world, we do have to come up with a specific KPI that we can deliver. And that's what we try to kind of put together. What is that this actually technology is going to make you out of it? And why should you do it? And why not some other? And why blockchain has to be there over here? And end of the day, what is that you're going to save? And, in terms of dollar value or in terms of something intangible?
Yeah. It's got to make sense to the buyer, and it's got to create real value. But it certainly sounds like it's not a blockchain winter right now there in India, at least. That there's so much interest and demand for talent, and so that's really good news for the students. Before I turn to Suji to get his take on the question, I'll note I see one raised hand in the attendee list. That's great, but I think the right thing, if you could ask your question in the Q&A, we will try to get to it. Although we have only 9 minutes left, so I want to be respectful and keep to the time, keep to the calendar, keep to the agenda. But let me switch to Suji and tell him, if you wanted to have the jungle background, you should keep that up. I was enjoying that. But could you share with us kind of how you, whether at DLT Ledgers or kind of in the work that you're doing now, view this question of impact, how you communicate that to the people you're working with, how do you really measure that?
So two things. Blockchain is here to stay. I think it is an evolution of the enterprise, interconnect between the enterprise. I also see that from the get-go of how the enterprise evolved from a small accounting software to a divisional software to a global engagement to a inter-party engagement. Blockchain is here to stay. And I manage it. Success of a blockchain or the blockchain domain will be that nobody will be speaking about blockchain in the next 2 years because it will come into a mainstream. For one example, I want to bring is that nobody talks about one of your key thing, Brian, your what you brought it into the foundation or is Apache server, web server. Nobody talks about it, but does it mean that it has gone away? No, it is there with every part of the solution. It is there. So the blockchain would be there for any party to have a transparent interaction with another party. And in 2 years, nobody will talk about the blockchain. I mean, I also went through another hype of when the RDBMS came in 1986 and 87, from the DBMS to an RDBMS, database management system, to a relational database management system. We also, in the nerds environment, we also went through the same hype. Now, nobody talks about the RDBMS. Everybody talks about the evolution of the NoSQL databases and everything. So the blockchain will also come into a stay within the next 2 years. Nobody will talk about the blockchain, but has it gone away? No, it will become a standard of the mainstream. So even when we talk, currently I'm not talking about the proof of concept with the various organizations. Say, for example, even in the COVID, when they wanted to have a vaccine, proof of vaccine for the travel bubble or the air travel bubble that Singapore is trying to manage it. I mean, it is given that it will be on blockchain. Nobody is talking about, to be very honest, any other solution as such. I mean, it is a de facto standard for the transparency and the immutability that is required as a part of it. It becomes sort of a complaints that you need to have a blockchain to achieve that compliance because of the trust issue between the multiple unrelated parties. So, I mean, I was so surprised when I was in a meeting with the couple of people with Estonia and Israel. I mean, everybody was talking about blockchain, but nobody talked about the blockchain as such, but everybody understood that that is going to be the structure below it. Nobody was talking about any database structures or anything, even in an identity. There are a couple of initiatives happening in the world, that the ID 2020, there are a lot of initiatives. Every initiative is depending on the blockchain as an underlying layer, but they rarely talk about. I mean, nowadays I don't talk about when I talk to the business. I've been working with the Ministry of Health in Singapore. No, I never talked about the blockchain. And when I talked with few other people, I never talked about the blockchain. That doesn't mean that blockchain is gone away, but everybody understood that that is the de facto standard. That is also what I'm trying to tell to the Singapore community. And I'm also going to the universities and telling them, blockchain is here to stay. It is not a hype. And what you're going to talk about, what you're going to do with it is the next thing. So a couple of initiatives, there's another startup come in India called Good Worker. Again, a startup investment from Singapore. And they have their solution, but the underlying, they don't talk about the blockchain, although the blockchain and the Hyperledger is the underlying solution, but they never talk about it. They talk about the business use case, why they want to do it, what is a requirement. And if you notice that every other off-the-shelf software vendors like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or SAP, they are saying that, okay, for me to communicate with it, for you as a customer to communicate with another party, you need blockchain. And they are not even trying to sell blockchain. That is a standard. There's no question about it. So many of the leaders that I interact with are talking about, I mean, like Arun said, the safety and the tracking. There is no other solution that can give you the transparency and the trusting nature of the food safety. And in 2025, any foods that is going into Europe need to have the provenance proof. So is there any solution out there that can do it? No, it's a blockchain. So I feel that nobody will talk about the blockchain in the 2 years. It is just a matter of the fact. I mean, it will just do it. The impact would be successful if nobody talks.
It's when we can take it for granted, right?
Correct.
Just like the internet. I at least I'm of the age, some of you might be, where it was a big deal when suddenly a company got on the internet, or some place or somebody got on the internet, and now it's bizarre if you're not on the internet. So yeah, I think that'll be a pivot point, and that will be a really big measure of impact, I think. We're just at a few minutes left. I did want to note that there was a question that Arun helpfully answered in Q&A. Kind of asking let me paraphrase, where might somebody start trying to understand how blockchain technology works, and then in particular how Hyperledger works? There is a learning materials and development working group that Arun pointed to, but even at a more basic level, we try to create some resources on the Hyperledger website to help inform people about how blockchain works and what these different pieces mean. It's never going to be enough. It's never perfect. I did also want to highlight, we have some training resources on the Linux Foundation's training website that are linked to from the Hyperledger site that are training courses on the theory and the business concepts, all the things that you should learn even before you learn more about the underlying technology. So definitely encourage people to check all of those out. We have just about 3 minutes left, and there was one more question I wanted to kind of go around the room and get people's take on. So I'm going to call on different people and try to keep it to like 30 seconds if you can. But what does the next year hold for enterprise blockchain technology? What will happen in 2021? If we meet here again in December of 2021 and check in, what will we be able to say will have been accomplished, especially in these strange times that we're in and this recovery that I'm sure we'll see over the course of the next year? Why don't I start with Alex and just give you the first word on that?
Yeah, well, in 30 seconds, that's for sure it's scalability. So we are there. We know that there is meaning, there is value, there is definitely activity going and happening. Now we have to make it such that it's so easy that scalability is not the next hurdle. So we want to, I want to see at 2021, gathering again, the 6th year anniversary of Hyperledger and saying we have very much, reached the scale that is so that blockchain is like business as usual. There's nothing exceptional. Blockchain is part of the core infrastructure. There is nothing that is, outstanding there. It's normal, it's boring, but it's very effective. And there is not even a question of whether or not it's scalable or not. And that goes from infrastructure all the way to code. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Okay, go ahead. Gijo?
Go ahead, Gijo.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So I'll just make it very brief. The COVID has accelerated digitization, right? So there are more companies that are coming up to see that, they wanted their process and, even interaction with their competitors and vendors to be digitized. So as Suji said, de facto standard, blockchain has become the de facto standard for that ecosystem interactions. So we see that going. And another interesting thing we observed is like, the early days of blockchain, when we just put together, working across countries, in a true borderless world has been a challenge, right? Now people have realized how you can localize, put regional specific rules and implementation, and at the same time, make it across multiple countries has been coming up. So we are getting unified and, organized into that ecosystem world, right? The TY as an example is around 57 countries now already. Casa Play is coming into that ecosystem.
All right. No, sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure we get enough others because I know we're up against time. Darman, do you want to give a take of what you think will happen next year?
Sure. Yeah. So primarily, I think, as everybody mentioned, technology has already proven its mettle. Nobody is talking or questioning what blockchain is now. I think for this whole this beautiful technology to kind of make a transformational impact, I see two things there. One is the technology portion, which I think there is a lot of innovation going on, and primarily for any technology to become mainstream, it requires those tools and frameworks for easy adoptability, which I think with the different tools and frameworks that are coming also under Hyperledger umbrella, those are fantastic. And the traction on them, and if they go on the right path with the acceleration, I think that's going to be one of the major adopters which we see with the customers. And there are more and more managed platforms that are now available, which are taking away a lot of pain in administration that otherwise is. So that's been taken care, and with we will be probably talking about zero knowledge, and we'll be talking about trusted execution environments. We'll be talking about few other additional things. How do we kind of now start taking the technology innovation towards the next level? But the second and most important, probably what I think is, because this technology is very transformational and it can bring the whole world connected together. So I see basically the the support from the policymakers, support from the regulators, basically in terms of regional, state, country, and the global. Unless we come up with those standards, how do can collaborate together, right? And it comes as a policy framework, which also becomes some legal framework or something to do with how we can coexist, and some standards around. I think this can turn into very, we can see a far more bigger impact. I mean, I think the acceleration is the right path, but there are still dependencies from different places that can come. I think technology is on the great path. The trajectory is amazing. But if we can get the support from the regulators and the standards, policies, and all that, it's going to be something different that we might discuss next year.
Thank you. Suji, do you have one sentence prediction for 2021?
Interoperability is going to be the major thing for the 2021, because there are a lot of islands of network being created, a lot of consolidation need to happen in the blockchain. Solutions like EOS, Ethereum, Coda, a lot of people are in the mix, and the consolidation will happen. And interoperability is going to be the next big thing in 2021.
Yeah, it's a big effort we have in something called the Hyperledger Cactus Project. I certainly encourage folks to check out. Arun, in one sentence, what do you see for 2021?
I'll put words in one sentence. So blockchain is going to have innovation, and it's going to, of course, redefine the way businesses work, how it worked in the past, right? So when it comes to innovation space, it's going to be like DIDs, which is going to play a major role in the coming year. And also, as Dharmin pointed out, there's going to be more regulations, government rules going to be around that. And how do we regulate things? Like, how do we formally verify things on blockchain? And the second thing is going to be on innovation, redefining fronts. I guess we are going to see more of innovations coming in from just a tool development perspective. How do we manage a consortium, for example? How do we get that ease of operations on blockchain? And how do we make it the internet of future?
Great points, especially on the consortium formation. And Adarsh, I'll give you the last word. What will happen in 2021, particularly in Kerala, the Indian subcontinent, and perhaps the rest of the world as well, in the blockchain world?
Yeah. So with regard to education, what I would say is like most of the universities are now trying to include the upcoming technologies. Say like blockchain is already there in the curriculum and all. Say like the basics of blockchain, say like the cryptography, data structures, and all those things, and relating to the enterprise adoption. So the students right from the UG level, they will have a feel of what exactly is happening on this space. So as Suji was mentioning, we don't have to speak about what is blockchain or what is the difference between a database and blockchain in future. Say they can directly come and contribute, like Aaron was mentioning, to the DIDs or the ZKPs and all those kind of things, mostly into the adoption level. So that is what I see in 2021. And with the COVID scenario, I've seen like in our online programs and all, so like we offer many free courses, and there's a lot of students who have done their courses online, and there's a lot of interest also coming up. Even say for the past 4 months, we have more than 2,300 enrollments in our online programs. So that's a big number when compared to a small state like Kerala. And that's what I see, like we don't have to speak about blockchain anymore, or we don't have to speak about Bitcoins or cryptocurrencies anymore. We can speak more on the adoption part. That's what I mean. And one more thing to add, Brian, like we have kept a half-hour slot also. Say like if it exceeds, we can take questions or and all. Say like we have a buffer time of half hour. So if some questions are coming, we can definitely take it also. No need to rush on the deadlines for the questions.
Oh, I understand. I know it's very much.
Yeah, I've seen some questions coming in from the audience and all.
No, and I've been watching the questions queue as well, and I think we've got them pretty well handled. So I definitely want to thank you, Adarsh, for that answer and for all the support from Carola. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Darman and Jijo and Suji. This has been a really information-dense panel. I'm glad we got all these different perspectives in place. I hope this really serves as a great kickoff for the fuller BlockHash event, and looking forward to being able to visit Carola with all of you sometime in the near future. And with that, I will pass the microphone back to our hosts. Thank you all.